Krásný den, já jsem Michaela Kalusová, jsem spoluzakladatelkou Jemného zrození a my jsme se domluvili s úžasným Thomasem Vernym, že dneska uděláme rozhovor, protože v březnu, 11. března v Praze proběhne kongres Smysl a těla s podtitulem Buněčná inteligence a paměť a hlavním řečníkem je kanadský psychiatr Thomas Verny, který pochází z Československa a přichází z důkazy, že základy naší odolnosti a zdravého šťastného života se netvoří až naším narozením, ale již od samotného početí. V roce 1981 Thomas Verny vydal knihu s názvem Tajný život nenarozeného dítěte a společně s Davidem Chamberlainem založili asociaci APA, která se zajímá o prenatální život dětí a vývoj dětí po porodu. Thomas Verny s námi bude si povídat o perinatální psychologii, o tom, jakým způsobem se děti vyvíjejí, jak jim můžeme pomoct, aby se vyvíjeli zdraví, aby žili svůj život šťastně. Tak.
Hello.
Hello. I can hear you.
Okay.
I cannot see you yet, but
I'm getting there. Okay.
if you click on your video.
I know. Thank you.
Wonderful. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for coming to have a chat with me. I have studied APA.
Yes.
So I am very much aware of your work and I admire it. It's amazing. And I'm a doula and I try to help women as well to connect to their babies. And I run antenatal classes where pre and perinatal psychology is a part of it. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you. I wanted to ask, I did make a little intro about your congress that you're going to be talking in Prague in March. And I wanted to know what is pre and perinatal psychology and why should people be interested in it?
Okay. Are you asking me now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, pre and perinatal psychology essentially focuses on the psychology of the unborn child, which for a very, very long time was neglected. People, even the best of scientists, thought that children before birth, actually even before the age of 2, were hardly capable of cognition or laying down memories or even dreaming. So that's one area. The other area, of course, is the relationship of that child to the mother and the father. And also it has become very evident that the way we are birthed, the actual process of birthing also leaves an imprint on the child's personality and physical body. So really, in a sense, pre and perinatal psychology focuses on all those aspects of early childhood development and the relationship of that child to the parents and the relationship of the parents to their environment. So all of that taken together is what we are focusing on.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that it starts pre-conception? Would you say it is important for people to take that into account as well, not just start when they are pregnant, but perhaps be interested in it before?
Yes, very much so. And that's a wonderful question. Very, very important. I have written about that a lot in my newest book, The Embodied Mind, where there's a whole chapter on genetics and particularly epigenetics. And it has been shown scientifically, like there's absolutely no discussion of this, no divergence of opinion, that everything that already the future mother and father experience can have a potential impact on the child which they are going to conceive. So just example, if the father, for example, smokes, that's going to affect his sperm, and the sperm then, which gives rise to the future child, will already have some degree of unhealthiness, if you like. There's a toxic element to that. So I think that if young couples who are thinking of having children in the future listen to this, I think it's very, very important for them to realize how they live prior to conception will have an effect on that child. Yeah. So your question is totally wonderful because not only have people not realized how important pregnancy is, but they have not realized that even the period before conception is important in terms of the health, mental and physical, of the future child.
Is there certain period before that is crucial? I know that I've read somewhere about 2 years, but is there something that, is known to be a certain type of period that needs to kind of be, cleansing and preparing? And
I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
It may the literature may be out there. I'm not aware of it, so I can't take a stance on it. I think that we are getting into such very complicated areas that it's difficult to say 2 years or 18 months or 9 months. Or all I can say is that if you start thinking of having a child, that is the time to really watch your diet, avoid smoking, avoid even breathing in smoke, and exercising and all the things that everybody nowadays tells you to do to take care of it. But I don't think that we should get like too obsessive compulsive about
what, how long, and yeah. Is there a way women can because perinatal psychology and how I've what I did in my pregnancies was to talk to babies a lot, and there is lots of communication and do women talk to babies right from the beginning? Is that as soon as they find out they're pregnant, because feeling welcomed and heard and seen is very important as well, right?
Let me give you a little story. How much time do we have, by the way?
How much time do you want?
I'm open until 10 to 10, 50 minutes. Okay. So I was being interviewed the other day by a lady, and we talked about these kinds of things. And she told me that during her first pregnancy, her husband was an intern, a medical doctor working in a hospital. He was never home. During her second pregnancy, I guess he graduated, whatever, but he was home every night, and he would talk to the baby in my womb, she said. And I said, well, what would he say? Oh, just about the weather and the kind of dinner we had. And then he would always close all his sort of talk, Junior, good night, see you tomorrow. So when the child was born, when the second child was born, my husband, she said to me, my husband walked in and my child was on my chest, and my husband said, hi, Junior. And my little son just looked at him and gave him this smile of recognition, like there was no doubt that he recognized his father's voice. But this is the important part. She said, now, 4 or 5 years later, the relationship between my second child and my husband is so much better than the relationship between the first child and my husband. And she was absolutely sure, and I would agree with her, that it's because prenatal bonding. There was an attachment there already. So once again, in terms of our listeners, it's very important to talk to the baby, but do not mistake that for all kinds of, mechanical devices. Like don't put some kind of a tape recorder on your abdomen to play music or Mozart or anything like that to the child, because 90 to 95% of the time the baby is asleep in your womb. So you're just waking him or her up. And that kind of mechanical input cannot take the place of a loving mother or father talking to the baby. So by all means, if you're pregnant, talk to your baby, dance with your baby, sing to the baby. You can also play with the baby by pushing in. I don't know whether you did that when you were pregnant, pushing in the app, pushing in the other side. The baby picks up the game and starts pushing against you.
Yeah.
These are the kinds of things that will stimulate the brain of the baby, which is good, and also set up prenatal bonding.
Mm-hmm. Because it invokes feelings, and those feelings are, I think most people can feel when they are stressed, how much it affects the body. So Absolutely. The positive feelings affect the body the same way. And so the more positively we feel, that the baby feels it. And that kind of brings me to another question, and another topic is the emotional state of the mother, and how do babies perceive that in the womb?
Yes. Well, the emotional state of the mother will very much influence how she relates to the baby, but also the hormone she's putting out. Mm-hmm. So really looking at two levels. We are looking at communication verbally, even through thoughts, and then we are looking at communication by the way of hormones. So if the mother is depressed, she will definitely speak less, focus less on the baby, which is not good. The will lack the stimulation that the baby needs in order to grow. So depression is not very good. Also, when there's depression, there are all kinds of stress hormones that are being produced, which again are not good either physically or psychologically. And one of the things that we have learned over time is that stress hormones, adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisone, all of these stress hormones interfere with neurogenesis, in other words, the birth of new neurons. And what is incredibly, incredibly important, and I say this in all my lectures because it is just so crucial, is that when there is too much stress, too many stress hormones in the brain, they actually interfere with the wiring of the brain. Mm-hmm. So if that goes on for too long, I mean, a little bit of stress is no big deal. That's fine. But if, for example, the mother is depressed or she is anxious perhaps about a job, or her father is very sick, any of these kinds of things that can happen, unfortunately, they produce stress hormones, and the stress hormones are going to interfere with the building of the brain. And so, fortunately, that child is going to be born already with a miswired brain. And that's like having the hardwiring of your computer not properly together. So how can it work? I mean, obviously, there is going to be a decrease in function. And I'm not saying that can't be repaired. Good parenting, lots of affection, lots of stimulation after birth can make a big difference. But at the beginning, at birth, that baby is not going to be as normal as it could have been had the mother been in better shape. So the mother thinks, feels, how she acts, what she eats, all those things are very, very important. Now, some mothers might hear this and say, oh, like we are being made guilty or anything like that because we have not taken care of our child during pregnancy. That's not the point. That's not the point of my remarks. I think that when we are looking at the glass full rather than the glass half empty, we have to realize that now mothers do have the power, which they did not have before. I mean, they did, but they didn't know they had it, that they can actually create a really healthy human being just by taking care of all the things we have just discussed. So it gives them a great deal of power. It's not taking power away from them at all. It's giving them more power than ever before.
I remember when I was pregnant, and obviously I have this knowledge, and I used it to my best capacity, and it was incredible. I remember when I got stressed, I would talk to the baby and I would explain that whatever I'm feeling is not the baby's feelings, and because babies are connected to the mother, so they can feel everything the mother is feeling, and it's good to separate that, right? Yes. And I remember that, you know, I used it much more in my second pregnancy. So my son used to interact, and I remember how the baby connected to all of those, you know, people who were living around me and with me. And the more we talked, the more I could feel my nervous system was calmer, and I could feel the baby was calmer, and the baby's reactions to me were calmer as well.
Right. Yes. All of that. And of course, it's also very important to have the father around if possible.
Yes. Yeah.
Like I said, in that little vignette, that little case study that I gave you right at the beginning, the father can have a very positive influence both on the baby, but also if he is a loving, supportive partner, husband, whatever, then the wife, of course, will be less stressed. So his presence, I mean, all the research shows that having a loving, supportive partner makes a big difference, positive.
Yes.
Difference.
Yeah. Yes, I could see my daughter after birth was looking for her dad and was actually seeking the eye contact and the connection with him as well, you know. And it's part of the thing that, because lots of people say, well, you know, in old days, men were not present, and in old days, men were behind. But from my work as a doula, I see in tremendous positive, influence the father's presence has. And every time the baby, after it's born, even when the baby sometimes needs some help, I always send the dad and tell him, go and talk to the baby and explain what's being done to the baby. And, you know, and it's much better than if anyone else does it, or if there is nobody who has this emotional connection to the baby and loves the baby. And it shows how they react, you know.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yes. So from, you know, the one thing that has always sort of puzzled me, I've always been wondering about, has been memory. You know, how do babies remember things before their brains were actually fully developed? This has always been a problem with me, and so that's sort of led me into my sort of more recent interest in cellular memory. And that's the book, Embodied Mind, that was published last year, and it's being published in Prague in March when I will be there. So I'm looking forward to that. And so, you know, trying to understand memory has always fascinated me. And so that's what led me then to this new episode, new chapter in my life in terms of going all the way back to the cells rather than the baby. So yeah, you might be interested in that.
Absolutely. Oh, I'm super excited. I would do these experiences in the womb and right after birth, because, you know, babies don't remember anything. You know, if we do this now, they're not going to know. And when they're adults, it's not going to be affecting them. Do the baby's experiences affect them in later life?
Oh, absolutely. On an unconscious level, mostly, 9 times out of 10. There are a few people who remember very early experiences. Some people can even go back without any sort of outside help. Okay, I'm not talking about psychedelic substances or hypnosis, but there are a few people, they let's say in a group of 100, there might be 2 or 3 people who have very vivid memories of early encounters. My wife actually is one of those who has always had very, very early memories. But most people have them, but they are in their unconscious, and some of them are able to access them with help. And in some cases, nothing seems to work and they can't get there. But that doesn't mean, it's sort of like these early experiences have a kind of gravitational pull on you, okay? Mm-hmm. Just like we don't know that there's gravity, like we have gotten so used to navigating this globe, we don't know that there is a huge force on us all the time. But just try to jump up, right? It will bring you down every time. That's how our, particularly traumatic memories work. So, and like birth, for example, has a very strong impact. Cesarean sections. Cesarean section babies are very different to start with. Then, of course, everything that happens to them later on in life will have also an impact. But, when you are just taken out of the womb instead of coming out on your own through the birth canal, that's a very different experience, and it will leave very different imprints on your mind, on your body. So, the baby that comes through the birth canal in a natural kind of birth will have like this wonderful feeling of being massaged all over their body, so that they are really in touch with their bodies. And also, if it has been, preferably without forceps, they will have the feeling that they made it on their own. So there is a kind of message in their brains which says, boy, I'm successful, I can make it, I feel good about my body. That's kind of like a secret script. Mm-hmm. But then let's say if you have a cesarean baby, and especially one that perhaps started down the birth canal but couldn't make it. Mm-hmm. So, there is this feeling, again, in terms of the birth script, there's this feeling, I cannot make it on my own. I need help. Somebody came in with their big hands and took me out of my mother's tummy. And also they have not had the sensation of the massage over their own bodies. And so also in terms of the bacteria, for example, that they pick up on the way out of the birth canal. Out of the birth canal, they pick up good bacteria from the mother, from inside the mother, especially lactobacilli, which then will help them digest breast milk. But if they are born by cesarean, they don't pick up those lactobacilli, so they will have more difficulty digesting milk. So there are all these problems. I don't want to go into too much detail. But there's a huge difference between natural childbirth and anything that sort of interferes with childbirth. And as usual, I'm sure I'm sort of singing to the choir here, but I'm sure that, all your listeners will agree that natural is better than any of the new technology interference. So,
and drugs, right?
Yeah. You have a natural childbirth?
I did, yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Both times. The second time I birthed at home in the water, and it was very beautiful. And we had a very clear communication together. I could literally feel her saying, I'm coming to come down now. I need you to move into a different position. And it was absolutely completely clear communication from her. And I also find that women who do communicate with babies during pregnancy, a lot and connect, tend to have more peaceful babies later, that they tend not to cry so much, they tend to communicate more, be calmer, and it makes a huge difference. And I wondered always, do we know how drugs in labor affect babies? Do we know how receiving opiates in labor can affect babies, for example?
There have been some Swedish studies from the Karolinska Institute that have shown that if mothers receive, for example, painkillers, that the babies, when they grow up, will have a higher rate of suicide by overdosing than children who were born without drugs, without their mothers having drugs. So also in terms of anesthetic, if they should have which is not done too often nowadays, but if the woman would have a general anesthetic or ether or anything of that sort, again, that has effect on babies. And I actually, I remember when I was doing very intensive, regressive kind of psychotherapy many years ago, every once in a while, I would have a patient who, when they sort of regressed back to their birth, I could actually smell ether in the room. I don't know how that is possible, but all I can tell you is that it was there. So there are still many mysteries in terms of the human body that we don't fully understand. But I think what we need to really understand and emphasize is the fact that how you are born makes a huge difference. And like you said, also the babies are much calmer if the mother is calmer, and the mother is going to be calmer if she has a kind of Le Boyer type of delivery, with the like you described, things like that. And of course, if you can have it at home, particularly if it's safe, if the baby is not too large, if you're in good shape physically, if there's a good doula present, then of course, having the birth at home is so much preferable to having it in the hospital. I mean, hospital are for sick people, and you're not sick having a baby.
Yeah, I agree. Birth is the only event where we go to hospital and we are not sick. Yeah. And lots of people, when they walk into hospital, associate the environment with being ill and kind of sometimes give up, on their power.
Absolutely right. Yes.
Yeah. So what can women do what would be the steps to take when they find out they're pregnant, and what can they start doing? Minimizing stress. What else can they do?
Well, minimizing stress is, of course, very, very important. Yes. Selecting your obstetrician or doula or midwife is very, very important. Making all the arrangements in plenty of time, because you never know, you could start going into labor, before the appointed time. The babies don't always follow the calendar. Avoid, if possible, absolutely, environments which are unhealthy, both in terms of, let's say, smoke, but also avoid any unnecessary exposure to stress. Like we said, that relationship with your husband is very important. Partner, father of the child, very important. Relationship with your mother is also something we have not talked about, but a lot of research shows that if you have a good relationship with your mother, and if the mother can be sort of in the background or even present, it will be very helpful, very, very helpful. If you have a bad relationship with the mother, don't let her in, okay? Don't let anybody into the birthing room who you don't like or don't feel supported by.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that your obstetrician or midwife or doula are sympathetic, are people that you really like again.
Mm-hmm.
Don't feel somehow obligated to see an obstetrician just because he has got huge number of letters behind his name, but you don't like his attitude. Mm-hmm. So use your head. When I was in my when I was in my final year of medical education in Toronto, I was working in a hospital, and I was working for 1 month on the obstetrical wing. And at that time, I wanted to become an obstetrician. I was really very, very interested in obstetrics. I was interested in psychiatry and obstetrics, and I was kind of weighing one against the other. And I just hated, really, that's the word. I just hated the way the obstetricians treated the women.
Mm. Yeah.
And that was it. I said, I don't want to be part of this culture. I didn't know anything about prenatal psychology, of course, or any of these things. I mean, I was very young, and this was in the 1960s, so a long time ago. But I just hated the way they yelled at them and push, and it was just horrible. So what I'm trying to say is, select your birth attendants carefully. That's one of the things that you can do, and listen to good music. Research seems to show that Baroque type music, Mozart, is really good, but as long as you listen to music that you like and that relax, again, let's not get too obsessive about these things.
Yeah.
The important thing is that the mother likes the music and that it relaxes her. So also walks outside is very important. Very important. Good air, very important. Women who live downtown where there are lots of car exhaust fumes has a very negative effect on babies. Again, research has shown huge differences. So those are the kinds of things, you have to look at those 9 months, not like something that is of no consequence to the baby, as people have done in the past. You only start worrying about the baby when it's born. No, start right from conception. And as we said at the beginning, even pre-conception.
Yeah. I always tell women also, you have to realize that birth is a hormonal process. It's all driven by hormones. It's basically one of the only events in our lives that hormones drive something so big.
Yes. Yes.
And so it's important to protect the production of the hormones. And so you have to do things that make you feel good for the hormones to actually produce.
Absolutely. Yeah. You have to do that. Yeah. And then, of course, when the baby is born, another thing that's really, really important is don't try to be a super mom and multitask. When you are breastfeeding the baby or bottle feeding the baby, don't be on the telephone to somebody else. Don't cook with the right hand and hold the baby with the left hand. Focus on the baby for those 10 or 15 minutes that you are feeding the baby. Just be attentive to the baby, talk to the baby, look into the baby's eyes. Don't do anything else.
Yeah. And that means don't let the baby do cry out as well.
Oh God, yes, that's a horrible thing. When people in the pediatricians in the 1950s sort of, and perhaps some of them still do, just let him cry, he will stop sooner or later. No, that's torture. That's totally inhumane. No, definitely go pick up the baby, put it back into its bed, leave for 10, 15 minutes, come back again, but don't let him cry. Just cry.
Yeah. And so what if women didn't know and they didn't do anything and they already have babies and now they, they might feel bad and they might feel like, oh, I've missed out on all of this, or the birth wasn't the way they wanted to and there was trauma. How can we repair?
Well, the first thing to realize that you did the best you could under the circumstance. There are no mothers, or perhaps very, very few, who want to harm their babies, right? I mean, all mothers want the best possible world to create for their babies. So if you had a cesarean section, for example, or if you were very stressed because of circumstances, financial or economic, whatever, it happened. And rather than feeling guilty about it, try to see what you can do to make up for it now, because that was then and there's nothing we can do about it, right? So let's move on. Like I said a few minutes ago, thank goodness a lot of repair can be done. Humans are very resilient. And so with affection and love and care and talking to the baby and talking to the infant when it's not a baby anymore, or even the child, will make a huge difference. I guess, I don't want to sound like a cliche, but love really is most important. Yeah. Love heals. And and also allowing the baby lots of stimulation. You have to find out, what are the talents of this baby. Some infants will have musical talents. Some of them will dance. Some of them will play chess. That's my favorite. Expose them to different experiences and see which one they are attracted to. Give them crayons, let them draw. Let them run outside, let them become interested in nature, in animals. It's good to have a dog or a cat around because it furthers empathy in towards other beings, which is important. And of course, the most important thing in terms of speaking of empathy, the most important thing, again, research has shown that adults who grow up in an environment, in a family where mother and father are humanists, where mother and father really express care about the world, about other people, they're sort of the opposite to being racist or prejudiced. This kind of humanist approach to life will have a huge positive impact on these children when they grow up. So, love children.
Love, being loving towards the world and others, and
that's it. So the loved child will return to the world the love that they received, whereas the hate child, the abused child, the child that is ill-treated will do the same to the world. They just continue what they learned. And so it's so important also, later on in life, it's so important, for example, to have dinners with your children, which fewer and fewer people nowadays do, because the mother is working, the father is working, they might be working at different times. So having like a family dinner is becoming a rarity. And that, again, is very, very important, because the children then sit there and they watch their parents interact, hopefully in a positive way. Hopefully they are not arguing. And so they learn about human contact and communication and interaction. And also they learn about family dynamics. They learn about the history of their family, because the mother and father might talk about their parents at the table. All of these things are getting lost now I mean, there are so many families that watch television during dinner time. I think that's toxic. I think that should be avoided at all costs. Talk, don't, rely on your electronic devices.
Yeah, use, connection, communication, and human touch, right? Also with babies, to touch them with bare hands, it's super important, rather than put them in blankets or something, but rather pick them up, and for women to be very, now I forgot the word, but for women to be very confident in carrying their babies, that all affects how they, develop. Yeah.
Baby. Right. And all of that, when you are hesitant, it communicates directly to the baby. Something wrong. And infants usually, unfortunately, always think it's their fault.
Oh.
It's they always, if you do anything wrong, I mean, even if you hit the baby, God forbid, but even if you were to hit the baby very often later on in life, when they come and see me in psychotherapy, they will say, it was my fault. I cried too loud. I misbehaved. They will rather take responsibility and guilt upon themselves than blaming their parents, because it's so important for children to see their parents as loving and good people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it takes a lot of abuse on the part of a parent to change the mind of that child and to make that child hate the parent rather than love them. So even when, like you said, if you perhaps touch the baby or infant because you're not quite sure how to do it, it's your first child, that will immediately send a message to the child that there's something wrong with him, not you.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's fascinating. Thank you so much.
So that's why we need people like you who can teach parents how to carry their children, how to behave with their children, how to, just be with their children. Yeah.
It's pretty simple, to be honest. It's just being so present and really focusing on somebody's asking me, how do I know I'm doing it right? I'm like, if you do it with love, you're doing it right. If you do it, the way you feel you want to do it, if you just think about it a little, you do it right.
Absolutely. You can't do anything wrong if you just do it lovingly and affectionately. And with empathy, think of how would you feel with a parent like yourself? What is it that you would want from that parent that perhaps you're not getting, or appreciating what you are getting? Put yourself into that child's skin, so to speak, for a few moments and think about that.
Yeah. Now, and I found out that you are from originally from Czechoslovakia. Bratislava. So you're from Slovakia. Fascinating. Can you speak Slovak?
No. Dobrý deň.
Dobrý deň. Okay.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Have a lovely day, and maybe sometime in the future we'll talk again.
Sure. Anytime you like.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.